Hey, what is up, mortals? It is JSatwekar here, and before we get into today's video, there's something I'd like to say. I'd like to let you all know that we have a merch store. Some of the items in it are only available for a limited amount of time, so if you're interested, go into the description and check it out. Each purchase helps us make more content. Secondly, if this video hits 500 likes by the end of the week, we will continue this What If. Thirdly, if you didn't know, only 41.3% of you guys are subscribed to us, so please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the story. UA announced that it would be closed the day after the attack to investigate how the villains entered the school. The next day, UA announced that it was working with the police and a group of heroes to increase security for the sports festival. UA also explained that the criminals who attacked USJ used their quirk to infiltrate UA to find out where All Might was supposed to be. The following day, Class 1A was waiting to see who their homeroom teacher was, while Aizawa was injured. A familiar green-haired boy had his left arm and right leg in a cast. Both casts were red in color. A pair of crutches rested on the floor next to his desk. A girl with brown hair walked into class and waved at him. "Deku, how are you feeling?" The girl with pink cheeks excitedly asked, seeing her friend. "How did you get those injuries?"
"Oi, round face, the nerd isn't okay," the atomic blonde yelled back without his usual attitude. "Deku, you better not pull a stunt like that again. You could have died, nerd."
"Give it a rest. I already explained this. My body started moving on its own," the boy with messy green hair muttered. "If anyone was reckless back there, it was you. The guy with the warping quirk easily could have sent you back to their base to their leader."
"Nerd, I wouldn't go down so easily. Besides, whoever controls those idiots is probably just as weak as those losers," Katsuki shouted. "I wonder why UA is bringing in more heroes."
"There's no logic to your statement, Bakugo," a man with messy black hair said in a monotone voice as the door opened. "Whoever called in the threats has enough power that All Might wouldn't let the sports festival occur without increased security." As Aizawa finished his statement, the class looked at their homeroom teacher, who was covered in bandages. Everyone in the class was stunned into silence at the comment that All Might felt the extra security was needed. A boy with blue hair stood up and looked at their teacher.
"Sir, you are too much of a pro,"
the blue-haired boy wearing glasses said.
"Ida, sit down. In 2 weeks, the sports festival will take place,"
their sleep-deprived-looking teacher mumbled through the bandages on his face.
"There won't be classes until after the sports festival. Due to the recent villain activity in the area, everyone will be required to stay home unless they are training with a UA teacher or someone who UA has approved."
The class was fairly normal, even after Aizawa passed out a slip of paper to each student. The slip of paper was a location and the person's name. The paper also had 2 times on it.
"The sheet of paper I just passed out contains the information about your training,"
Aizawa lazily said.
"Each training group will have either 4 or 5 people. If you have any sort of blood or family-type connection to someone, they won't be allowed to train you."
Aizawa left the room. Everyone in the room was silent as they looked at their slip of paper. The first thing that Izuku picked up on was the hero name. The class quickly divided into groups as everyone tried to figure out who they were training with.
"Hey, nerd, do you recognize the name of the person who's training you?" Katsuki growled.
"It seems familiar," Izuku muttered as he showed his piece of paper to Katsuki. "Deku, where are you going to train?" Uraraka excitedly asked as she walked over to Izuku.
"Dagoba Beach," Izuku said with a smile. "What location did you get, Uraraka?"
"We got the same location," Uraraka excitedly said as she bounced on the balls of her feet. "Bakugo, where are you training at?"
"The same place as you, round face," Katsuki growled in frustration.
"It seems that our training partners are the same as for the battle training we did with All Might," Ida said as he ran up to the group.
"Does anyone recognize the name of the person training us?" "No. Whoever the extra is, he better not waste our time," Katsuki grumbled in annoyance.
"Kachan, as long as we have something to do, it will benefit us," Izuku muttered. "There's more to being a hero than fighting. The person might not see a reason to focus on our fighting ability."
"Deku, quit muttering," Katsuki growled in frustration. "I have no intention of staying at the same level. USJ was a wake-up call. Whatever that thing All Might fought, it was able to take All Might full power." "Bakugo, you shouldn't growl at your fellow classmates," Ida said in frustration while moving his left arm like a robot. I agree with you. If the class had been stronger, we could have taken the villains down before All Might got there. If I had been stronger, 13 wouldn't have felt the need to send me back to UA. Ida? 13 sent you back because you're strong, Izuku stammered as he looked Ida in the eyes. 13 picked you because you were the fastest. If it hadn't been for you going for help, my condition might have been worse. According to the reports, the villains blocked all communication with USJ. The nerd has a point. We needed the assistance you brought, Katsuki growled, hating the fact that they needed help. It still pisses me off that you were able to one-up me, Deku. Indeed, I don't like the fact that you guys had to take villains down, Ida said as he started to point at Izuku's injuries. I fully intend to close the gap between us, Midoriya. The same goes for you, Bakugo. I don't intend to fall behind. I'd expect nothing less from you, Four Eyes. Deku, don't hold back on me during the sports festival, Katsuki growled as he looked at the rest of the class trying to leave. The four of them walked up to the classroom door and saw a large group of people out in the hallway. Katsuki grumbled as he shoved his way through. If one of the students didn't move out of his way, he sent off a small explosion to get the person to move faster. Quit blocking the doorway, extras. We don't have time for this, Katsuki shouted in anger as he left the classroom. If you have time to scout us, then you have time to train. If you guys want to become heroes, you should quit looking at us and train. Katsuki let off a slightly larger explosion before stomping off in frustration. The crowd of people started to mutter about what the explosive boy said. After that, the crowd dispersed, letting Class 1A leave. The following day, Uraraka got to the training location late. As she got to the beach, she thought she heard thunder in the distance and looked at the sky, trying to find the clouds. You're late. Your friends have already started training, a man in a plain white suit said as Uraraka approached. The thunder that you hear is coming from Midoriya, using his quirk. Sorry, sir. I had trouble falling asleep. I ended up missing my alarm and I finally went to sleep, Uraraka said sheepishly. On the table are training weights for you. Make sure to put them on, the man said as he pointed to the table with the weights. We don't have time for excuses. All Might said that you four showed potential. Prove yourself worthy of his praise. Uraraka walked over to the table and examined the weights. She looked around and saw Ida running between two wood logs that were about 10 meters apart from each other. As Ida got to one log, he would put the item he was carrying down and pick up a different object. She noticed that Katsuki was busy trying to keep 6 cement poles moving. The only other thing she saw was a box made out of metal. Uraraka put the weights on and waited for more instructions. You're finally ready. Follow me to your training area, the man said as he pushed his glasses into their proper spot. All Might showed me the footage from the battle training. Based on what I saw, I think stamina training will benefit you more than simply increasing the weight you handle. I don't see anything for me to use my quirk on, Uraraka asked in confusion. See these logs that have a 20-meter length? The man said as he walked over to the logs that were behind Uraraka. All Might, along with a few other pros, helped me set this up. Your goal is to find every object I buried and make it float. I buried a shovel in the middle of the square and it's near the surface. If you need it to move the sand out of the way, feel free to. Remember, you can't release any of the items you found until I instruct you. With that, Night-Eye walked away, leaving Uraraka alone as she entered her area. Once she got to the center of the square, she was able to find the shovel pretty quickly. At first, she found the exercise to be easy as she started looking for various buried items. However, if she wasn't careful, the sand she dug out would fill the hole in. The objects were placed so that she buried another one deeper in the sand as she dug up a new one. Night-Eye walked over to where Ida was training and watched as he ran to each log. Night-Eye noticed that Ida kept both the weight he picked up and the speed he traveled at a constant rate. You're missing the point of the exercise, Ida, Night-Eye said as he watched Ida with interest. You're pacing yourself. However, you're missing the point. You need to pick up each item and move it. As a hero, you need to get to and from a situation as quickly as possible. You also won't know what job you're going to get. You have to train every muscle group to its fullest. Ida started to increase his speed and changed what he lifted. It wasn't easy as it slowed him down at first. Ida realized the objects on either side were the same. Ida decided that he would switch the item he picked up each time he returned to the log he started from. Once Ida adapted to the new routine, he began to increase his speed slowly. Night-Eye walked over to Katsuki.
Koski ran over to the far left pole and released an explosion. The explosion ended up being too weak, and the cement pole slammed into him. Koski wiped the sweat off his face and went back to trying to keep the poles moving. Pace yourself. Overworking yourself will leave you unable to help the people who need saving, Night Eye said as he watched Koski for another 30 seconds. Before we get back into the story, I would like to say that we've got a second channel called Anime Deep Dive. Anime Deep Dive goes over the hard facts of the anime presented. Now, in case you guys didn't know, we have a third channel called We the Celestials Naruto What If. We the Celestials Naruto What If mainly focuses on our Naruto What If series. If you are interested in content like this, please go check the description below or click the eye icon in the top right corner. Now with that out of the way, let's get back into the story. Once Night Eye was sure Koski took his advice, he walked over to the metal box. Once he was at the metal box, he looked at the cameras. Izuku was inside the box trying to dodge blue balls. As a disc went by his head, Izuku extended his left arm to catch the disc. Izuku yanked his left arm back in as a blue ball rocketed towards where his hand would have been. Night Eye continued to watch Izuku's movement. Midoriya, I'm going to increase the speed of the balls now. Make sure to plan out where you're going to land, Night Eye flatly said into the microphone. The balls will be moving at different speeds now, so make sure to account for that. Night Eye then moved a small lever before he started walking away. Izuku heard the announcement as sweat began to drip down his face. Izuku started analyzing the ball movements. One of the balls hit him on the left shin 30 seconds after the speed was increased. After a minute, another ball hit his right arm. 5 minutes later, one of the balls slammed into his nose. Izuku wiped off the small amount of blood and continued trying to dodge the balls. Mere moments before Night Eye deactivated the machines, Izuku caught one of the discs and tossed it into the bin. Well done, Midoriya. You were able to catch a total of 10 discs, Night Eye said, with little emotion in his voice. It's lunchtime. After lunch, I will be asking you guys what you learned. If you can prove you learned something from the training, I will give you an hour break. Once the balls stopped bouncing around the box, Izuku let out a sigh of relief. As Izuku walked outside, he was greeted by Night Eye, who was staring intently at him. Izuku closed the door before shaking his right arm. Thank you, sir, Izuku said happily. Izuku then ran over to where the others were. Deku, what kind of training did you have? Uraraka excitedly asked as Izuku walked up to them. Awareness training. I have to pay attention to the projectiles being shot at me, Izuku happily said as he approached his friends. Night Eye thinks I need to focus on my surroundings more. Night Eye waited until everyone finished eating before he motioned for everyone to quiet down. Night Eye first looked at Uraraka before he turned his gaze towards the other students. One at a time, please tell me what you learned today, Night Eye said as he looked at the students with an intense glare on his face. I learned that I couldn't just use my quirk without considering how large I want the explosion, Koski grumbled out of frustration. If my explosion wasn't powerful enough, I got hit. If it was too strong, the pole got destroyed. While the main goal was to teach you better judgment, there is more to your training than that, Night Eye said in disappointment. It seems you missed part of what the lesson was supposed to teach. You have 5 minutes to get those poles moving. Ida, you're next. I figured out that I needed to be ready to swiftly respond to the situation as a hero, Ida nervously said as he looked toward Koski. I also can't rely on having the needed space to get to switch gears. Close enough. I'll give you a 30-minute break, Night Eye calmly said as he stared at Ida. Uraraka, since you were late, what did you learn from your training? I learned that I need to better analyze the situation I'm in, Uraraka happily said as she looked at Night Eye. It took me entirely too long to figure out that I had to be careful where I placed the sand. If I placed it right next to me, I just made it harder for myself to find the next object. In a rescue mission, I could have made the situation worse by floating the wrong object. Well done, Night Eye said as he let a small smile appear on his face for a couple of seconds. You get the full hour break because you understood the point of the exercise. How about you, Midoriya? I learned that I have to be able to handle multiple things at once, Izuku started to mutter. The ball I dodged probably represented the villains I would have to avoid while rescuing civilians. As a hero, I have to make sure that the civilians are safe before I do anything else, even if it means having to let another hero fight the villain.
It is essential to read the situation properly, Night Eye said as his smile faded. Training the physical body is important, but you have to be able to train the mind. Bakugo needs to learn that his explosions have a radius. Accounting for that in any given situation would allow him to react to changes in his opponent's moves. Instinct alone won't get you very far. The 2 weeks flew by for Class 1A as they were forced to undergo intense training that focused on the body and mind. The training was specifically designed to target each student's weakest areas. Pro heroes were working in shifts to protect UA better as the sports festival was about to begin. Near the stadium, a strange-looking black mist started to form. 2 bright yellow eyes watched the pro heroes move about. Very carefully, the mist moved into the shadows of the stadium and disappeared. Class 1A was sitting in the waiting room with their gym uniforms on. President Mike called the first years to the starting line. The first years assembled at the starting line. Just like in canon, Todoroki froze everyone around him as he started to run forward. Everyone in Class 1A and half of 1B managed to avoid getting frozen. Mere moments after Todoroki froze everyone, Izuku was already beginning to catch up to him. Todoroki, Katsuki, and Izuku were leading the way to the first obstacle. The first obstacle was the robots from the entrance exam. Katsuki simply used his explosions to propel himself over the robots as Todoroki froze the robots' feet. Izuku took advantage of the robots being frozen and used his quirk to dart past them. Izuku was able to take the lead. Izuku slowed down once he got to the second obstacle. The second obstacle was crossing a canyon using rope lines. Izuku reduced the output of his quirk so that he wouldn't have to risk damaging the rope. This allowed both Todoroki and Katsuki to catch up with him. They entered a dead heat as they arrived at the final obstacle. Katsuki used his quirk to propel himself above the mines that were placed underground. Todoroki simply froze the ground where he was running. Izuku used his quirk so he could carefully dodge the placement of the mines as he ran forwards. Izuku watched as both Katsuki and Todoroki started fighting each other. Once they were distracted, Izuku increased the output of his quirk so that he could move faster. Izuku then started to run forwards as fast as he could. As he ran past his classmates, Izuku stepped on a landmine. As Izuku was doing that, he increased his quirk's output to its limit and sprinted forward. Izuku entered the stadium first, followed by Katsuki in second and Todoroki in third. Everyone in Class 1A and 1B made it to the second part of the sports festival. Once it was decided who would be in the second part of the sports festival, there was a brief pause to allow the pro heroes and the police to switch to the second group. This gave everyone who failed to qualify for the second part of the sports festival time to make it to their seats. Midnight took to the podium and started to explain the second event. The second event would be a cavalry battle. The first 10 people who made it into the stadium would have a higher point value than everyone else. If you were in the top 10, you couldn't pair up with someone else in the top 10. First place would have the 10 million point headband. Izuku looked around nervously as the point value for first place was announced. Once the rules were thoroughly explained, Midnight told everyone to form into a team. Most people would rather try and steal the first place headband instead of starting with it, Izuku started to mutter as he searched around for teammates. Ida was the first person that Izuku ran into. Sorry, Midoriya, I already have a team. We might be friends, but we are rivals, Ida said with determination. Good luck to you, Ida. I don't intend to lose, Izuku happily said as he understood why Ida didn't want to team up. The teams were the same as canon, aside from one slight change. Izuku switched places with Tokoyami. In the shadows of the announcer's booth, a black mist started to form. The same bright yellow eyes stared at the crowd eerily. The mist formed into the shape of a man wearing suit pants, a button-down dress shirt, and a vest. He waited until the cavalry battle teams were selected. Both All Might and Endeavor started coughing up some sort of black liquid as the match was about to begin. All Might quickly turned into his hero form as the liquid started to surround him. Endeavor tried to vaporize the quirk with his fire, but nothing happened. The moment the two of them were encased in the liquid, it disappeared. As the cavalry battle started, black portals began to appear in the sky above the spectators. Creatures similar to the Nomu started to appear out of the portals. The main difference between these creatures and the Nomu at USJ was the color of their skin. The ones appearing were a white color. The Nomu at USJ was a much darker color. The strange white creatures started to land in the stands and the field.
Panic ensued as people began to flee from the creatures that landed. The white creatures on the field started to target the students who are currently set up to do the cavalry battle. Both Endeavor and All Might appeared before a man in a nice black suit wearing a black mask about 6 miles to the east. As the two pro heroes prepared to fight the villain, several dozen creatures similar to the ones currently attacking UA appeared. Near the two pro heroes was a familiar form of the creature that attacked USJ. A black portal started to form near the villain. The villain's arm enlarged as he began to prepare an attack. Once the portal was fully formed, the man simply released his attack. Before either hero could respond, the villain started to laugh. The creatures began to descend onto both of them. The villain simply floated through a portal. Before the portal could close, both heroes heard the sounds of gunshots and screaming. At that moment in time, All Might's cell phone started to ring. As All Might smacked away some of the white creatures, the Nomu attacked him with a right punch straight to the face. The punch sent All Might flying into a nearby wall. One white creature hung back as a black and white liquid started to ooze from its mouth. Endeavor growled in frustration as he realized the villain was using these creatures as bait to distract them. Endeavor then released a large amount of fire from his body aimed at the creature's back. All Might picked himself up out of the rubble and rushed to fight Nomu. "What are you playing at, One for All?" All Might growled in frustration. A sudden sense of dread filled his stomach as he saw who was calling him on the phone. Thank you all for watching the video to the end. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. On behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank the writer of this video and editors for this video. Their details will be in the description. If you're a voice actor, editor, or writer, or you're interested in becoming one of those, go to the Discord that is in the description of this video and hit up the head of one of those areas. We're always looking for members to join us. That's it from us for today's video, so thank you all for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're interested, and hit that like button if you liked the video. Until next time, peace out, mortals. Have a fantastic day.